Welcome to episode 176 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to Neil Arthur from Blancmange about their career-spanning compilation, Everything is Connected, the best of Blancmange, 1979 to 2004. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to award-winning Liverpudlian singer-songwriter Banners. Other episodes this year have been with Crowded House, Elbow, Ride, Cast, Dea Matrona, and lots more. So check them out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Blancmange's story is of two chapters. In the early 80s, they infused the synth-pop scene with oblique lyrics and wry British humour, which saw them soar into the top 10, with singles such as Living on the Ceiling, Blind Vision, and Don't Tell Me. And since 2011's Blanc Burn album, they've taken that style into a new century and somehow become more prolific than ever. In this interview, Neil Arthur discusses Everything is Connected, his love for Abba, getting stopped by the police on his way to Top of the Pops, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Neil Arthur from Blancmange. So hi Neil, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on here. Thank you very much indeed, Mark.
It's great to have you, Neil. I'd like to go back to the start. Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash was on a lot in our house. And before that, Fat Swallow. And the first record I bought was I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones in 1965. I bought it for 2 and 6 from I think I must have been given like a token for my birthday, a record token. And I went down to the only shop in Darwin, a record shop, Nightingales. And I bought the record there and listened to it in one of those sound booths with my sister. And then moving beyond that, Mark, I loved T-Rex. I really liked T-Rex when I became aware that I kind of, this is music for me. And following on from that, May 31st, 1973, I went with a friend, Trevor Greenosh, otherwise known as Beanie, to see David Bowie and the Spiders, basically the Ziggy Stardust tour. And I went to see that. And that was life-changing. That was incredible, that moment. And that stayed with me. In fact, I've still got the poster from that gig that I bought.
You're very lucky because it's hard for, people to comprehend what David Bowie was like. Well, what it was like actually, even the way he looked then. It seems, normal now, but nobody had ever seen that look before or that kind of music. So it must have been amazing actually seeing it physically live.
Yeah, and it wasn't. The other thing was that the way your limited access to it didn't seem limited, but looking back at it now, compared to the way you have access to music today, was that to see somebody like David Bowie, who to me immediately represents. I'm not saying I was an outsider by any stretch of the imagination, but I knew that kind of like art was my thing. Art was, even at a young age, art was where I was going. And my mates were all going to do apprenticeships. And I was just not going down that route. I was going to try and go to art college if, I'm lucky enough to get a place. And when I saw David Bowie, it just clicked. It clicked with me. And, something that kind of like, I thought he almost represented this kind of outsider, even with all the popularity that he had. There was something that you could identify to, and particularly within the lyrics of the songs as well and stuff like that. So it was great. And then I love Roxy Music, the Velvet Underground. I got into Eno through Roxy Music and his solo stuff, and through, into cluster and noi and can, and it just kind of goes on and on. But my biggest, I mentioned this just a minute ago, that the biggest thing for me, biggest influence wasn't always music. It was all the stuff. It was kind of everything you could see around you. And one of the things I loved was art, all different types of art. And that was pushing me in an area where I thought, it's a means of expression. I thought I could find a way of, kind of expressing myself through being creative as an artist. And then I never thought for 1 minute that I'd be a musician. I thought I'd be an appreciator of love. I mean, we all messed around with guitars, and on, my mate's house, you could play piano, so acting daft, kind of making silly noises on the piano. But I never thought I'd be a musician. Not until I went to art college. It hadn't even crossed my mind.
What was the catalyst that made you change direction?
Punk. Yeah, that'd be a punk, but not particularly the sound. Although there were some great songs, it was the attitude, and to put it in a nutshell, the DIY aspect of it, and the fact that it was clear that you could express yourself and not have to be a proficient musician, a so-called proficient musician. Those things were of the past, and it didn't. So that kind of opened up a door. And of course, when post-punk came in, people were flailing around very successfully as well, looking for new means of expression. And one of the routes I went through via bands like This Heat and Pere Ubu, Cabaret Voltaire, was into this thing that became Blancmange. And these two new non-musicians, Stephen and myself, found we're like chalk and cheese, but our common ground was music. So found means of expression that way, and it was just another way of expressing ourselves, really. Seems daft, really, now after all these years of having made music professionally, that we hadn't really considered it. Both of us thought we'd end up as graphic designers or illustrators or something to try and earn the pennies,
In the beginning of the band, you did really go down the DIY route. You were experimenting, making music with homemade instruments. So what kind of instruments were you using, or household items, or what were they?
Yeah, well, Tupperware was very useful for drums. We used to use a lot of Tupperware, tape loops, anything. A lot of stuff came out of the kitchen. A lot of stuff came out of the kitchen into the living room, and we just mic'd it up and bashed it. And so mic'd it up. It was one mic, and a load of basically kitchen stuff on the floor, and we hit it. And I'd made a guitar whilst I was still at school, and then using the template and instructions from Practical Electronic, I think the magazine was called. But because I'm tall and I've got very long arms and legs, I decided I wanted the neck. I'm going off at a tangent here, but I wanted the neck on my guitar to be a bit bigger than this template suggested in the magazine. So I got out my slide rule, and I decided I'd start from the top bridge. And then I'd make it as long as I wanted. It'd be like, it'd be that long. I'll stretch my arm out and went, about there. So I measured that, and then I worked out the frets on a slide rule. So by the time you got down to by the time you got past the 12th fret, there was no space in between. There was more fret than wood. Let's put it that way. So when I eventually kind of wired the guitar up, it made some quite interesting noises. I decided, with the help of one of the teachers at school, that I'd make an amplifier as well. The guitar went in the attic and stayed up in Lancashire when I went down to London to art college, but the amplifier came with me. And that amplifier had everything put through it, Mark, including a guitar I bought off a friend, Tony, who was on the same course as me. I bought it for, it's a Gibson SG copy. I bought it for £18. And that featured heavily on everything. It's on Sad Day, it's on Holiday Camp, and Just Another Spectre, all those early songs of ours, So, and Stephen had a cheap organ which he put through different foot pedals, and then we invested in something called a Milos Echo unit, which the beauty of it was that it was floored, which was perfect for Blancmange because we're so floored. And it just fitted in exactly with our kind of light and dark moods and sounds.
Can you remember the first track that you and Stephen wrote together and you thought, right, we're on to something, we know what we're doing here?
No, not really. I can remember songs we wrote, but I don't think I've ever thought we're onto something. There was a period where the sounds we were making were very much like, I don't know if you've heard our first EP at Iron and Mavis, but they were very much like that. They were the most accessible of the songs that we made in that first period. My partner and I, Helen and I, went to see many times This Heat, and one particular time they were playing with the Young Marble Giants, and I fell in love with this band and their sound. And I thought, you know what, I've got a few ideas that have been knocking around. I wonder if I took an angle that's a bit more like that. So that's what I came up with, the embryonic versions of I've Seen the Word and Waves and Can't Explain, and took those to Stephen, and he made them, he made some sense out of what I took to them as well. So that was a bit of a turning point for us. And I suppose the nearest reference to that now on this on this compilation would be Sad Day and I've Seen the Word. So that's the kind of early period where we kind of started structuring songs. That's what I'm trying to say. We're aware that, I'm going to start, we could have a verse and a chorus.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you're about to release your career-spanning compilation, Everything is Connected, the best of Blancmange 1979 to 2024. It's out on the 11th of May. So why was it now the time to put it out?
I wasn't going to release a new album this year. So last year...
That's a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I will add to that. But I'm in the process of writing a couple at the moment. You can't get rid of me that easily. So there's more to come. Anyway, so Stephen, mainly is my manager, and I had a chat. And we had a chat with the record company, London, who I'm lucky enough to be signed to again. And they thought, it's quite a good idea. But we put a twist on it, because what we decided we'd do we'd release like a double CD, and there's vinyls, just one LP, but it would be the best of the old and the new, and something that takes us into the new period as well, beyond the new period. So there's something brand new as well. Although there's a twist again, it's a double twist, because it seemed a good year to do it. It just so happened that it was 45 years since we got together. And then last year I discovered a song that I'd started with a band that ran parallel to Blancmange. In fact, Stephen played in L360, the name of the band. And I had several songs, and I didn't have enough experience to finish them, or gumption, or, we didn't know how to do stuff, So, in fact, I still argue that I don't know now. So it's it's a case of learning all the time, isn't it? So I had a moment last year where this song started to come together, and then I went down to Benji's, who I work with on all the Blancmange stuff and on the Fader projects as well. And in a couple of days, less than a couple of days, we kind of finished it, really. So on this compilation, there's there's a kind of a semi-new song. It started in 79 and I finished it in 2024. So again, I wait for the world's on there. It seemed like the right time to put out this compilation and then move on to the next stage with new stuff.
Yeah, and it's a great track. And the thing is, it just fits in seamlessly with the rest of the tracks.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Oh, that's nice of you to say.
You wouldn't think it was originally the genesis was 1979. I think the idea was floating around.
Yeah. So when I was still at art college, and again, I wait for the world. I was always bloody late for everything. And I'm terrible at timekeeping. The only thing I'm not late for is football, and I'm not. Hopefully, I'm never late on stage. It's like, because that would be terrible. And I'm late. Oh, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible timekeeper. I always have been.
Did you get nostalgic looking back at the songs when you were compiling the compilation?
No, I'm not really. You kind of brought back some. Of course, it brings back memories, but I'm not really much of a. I don't think I'm very nostalgic. So I'm kind of more interested in what I was kind of. I don't really listen to Blancmange unless I have to. Obviously, I want to learn the songs, and I spend so long, quite a long time writing them. Sometimes not a long time writing them, but sometimes a long time, or mixing them, and then it's a really good word, I think, that we release them. They're released for other people to hopefully enjoy. So when I was looking, having to listen to the old ones to make sure that we got the right mix or they've been remastered. So I want to check that. I was listening in a kind of technical way, I suppose. And every so often, you kind of go, oh, yeah, I remember that studio. Or, yeah, I remember Stephen did that. Oh, yes, he tried to make me laugh whilst I was singing that or whatever, But, yeah. I showed the cover to Stephen the other day. And I went round to see him because he's been very unwell. Again, very unwell. And so I went round to see him and give him a big hug because I love him. And I showed him the cover of the new compilation and he really laughed because he said, it's so Blancmange. And I thought, oh, Stephen, that's really nice of you to say. And so, it's a reference to the Iron and Mavis as well. So where we started in the laundrette.
Right. No, it's a great cover. Yes, as you mentioned, you signed with London Records in 1982, so this was post-punk, and synths were very much a new instrument. It must have been a very exciting time, actually experimenting, with this new instrument, especially since you were, previously using Tupperware boxes.
Well, every so often we'd borrow a synthesizer from a friend and use them on tracks. But we didn't own a synthesizer until after we'd recorded Happy Families. So the synthesizers on the first album were borrowed or hired, and we had to learn about them. So you got a Lindrum in, and you got the manual out, or you check the manual over your shoulder and just kind of started making mistakes and hoping that some of the mistakes might be a bit useful. But most synths, if you kind of have a bit of common sense, you can find your way around them. That was the case until they went digital. And I remember the first time I saw a DX7. It was in New York. I just looked at it, and there's that little screen on the front of it, and I went, nah, we're not using that, because you don't want to just use the presets. And it took ages to change the presets, pressing buttons. Like, oh, God. You want to have your hands on things and twiddling knobs. There are some beautiful digital synthesizers, I know there are. But, so getting our hands on an analog synth back in 82 or before that, they were borrowed. And then Beg Stolen are borrowed. And then after the album, we started getting one or two.
When you're writing songs now, is the synthesizer still your go-to instrument initially when you're putting ideas around?
At the moment, actually, I am writing on the synth, yeah. I don't go in the studio unless I've got an idea. So I tend to work out the idea on something really simple. So a laptop with one thing plugged into it, just one. I don't know, it might be a boutique synth. It might be I'd use an acoustic guitar actually as well. In fact, more often than not, it would start on an acoustic guitar, and then I take it and put the idea, if I feel it's worth going and sitting down and spending any time on it. And people will probably argue, why does he bother going in at all? I mean, it is only Blancmange. You've got to take it all with a pinch of salt, really. So then I'll take the idea and I'll put it from the phone. If I've just sung it into the recorder, or if I'm looking at notes on an iPhone, the lyrics will suggest a melody or a rhythm, and I'll get a doors up, and I tend to use either Logic or Ableton. So just put a very, very simple idea down, and if it holds up, and I come back to it in a few days, and it's still kind of, well, obviously the file's going to be there, but if it still kind of sounds like it's worth putting some time in, I'll, maybe give it a go. I quite often have the best ideas when I'm out on a cycle rider in the middle of a football match or something like that. A long, long way away from a synthesizer.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're out and about and the song comes from the ether to you, if you didn't remember it when you got home, to put it down, it's probably not worth using, is it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, I'm long enough in the tooth to know that, some of the ideas I probably shouldn't have started in the first place. I've been doing I won't tell you the title of it. So I did have to go in my little workroom to get things ready for the tour. And we use, amongst other things, an MPCX, Akai MPCX. And I started programming some MIDI parts in there that I might be able to send to Finley, who's going to be playing keyboards. And they might be useful to him. And I spent 3 days. I say I don't go in the studio unless I got an idea. Well, the problem is this idea for this song came 40 years ago. And it'll be in the set list for rehearsals. Whether it makes it to the tour, I don't know. I spent 3 days doing this, and it nearly drove me crazy. And I just went, nah, this is. I'll put this to one side. But it wasn't. I'm going to give you a big hint here. Oh God, you're working on something. You think, yeah, I got those sounds right. Yeah, I think Finley would like that, so you can reference that and get that up on the synth he's going to use. So that's a good reference point. There's a kind of area where I think we might need that might need 2 keyboards. So you might have to think about putting something underneath that on the other keyboard. And on the third day, I listened back to what I got. It just sounded, I thought it sounded dreadful. Finley didn't agree when I played it to him, but I thought it sounded dreadful. But it was a case of me, I'd just been with it too long. So I sat out with my partner. Having a beer. It was one of the few sunny evenings. So we're sitting there having a drink. And she said, God, blimey, it sounds like I've heard you cursing a bit. And I said, yeah. So it's been driving me nuts as that song. And normally I just get on with it. It's good. She said, I think the answer's in the title. And so now I will tell you what the song was called. It's called Why Don't They Leave Things Alone? I spent 3 fucking days working on it. I was going, oh my God, it had driven me mad. So anyway, it's in the rehearsal. Whether it gets past rehearsal, I don't know. But my God, it was hard work. It sounds really simple, the song, but it bloody wasn't when I started undoing it into little bits to try and analyze it. Anyway, I'm waffling on.
I must mention your biggest hit, Living on the Ceiling. You performed it in 1982 on Top of the Pops. At the time, it went in at number 37. What can you remember? I mean, everybody grew up, watching Top of the Pops. So what was your first appearance like? How did it feel for you? Was it what you thought?
Like I said, I can remember it really clearly. I suppose you would, So I was living in Peckham, South London, and I got picked up by my. We had two managers. We had a management company, and one of them, Paul, picked me up because he was coming from further south. He was coming from Kent to Surrey. I can't remember anyway. So he picked me up and we drove in. I was meeting Stephen and our other manager there, and you have a plugger and the record company would be there. We're all a bit excited. And I can remember going through Belgravia and I cracked open a beer. As we're in the car, he's got a GTI Golf, and we cracked open a beer. And just as we cracked it open, the police just went, "Stop!" He just stood out in the road like he was waiting for us. He said, "Guys," he said, "what are you doing drinking?" And he said, "Oh," and my manager said, "Oh, we're on our way to Top of the Pops." On the way to Top of the Pops. He said, "Nevertheless, you shouldn't be drinking." He said, "Look, put your drinks away." I'm a passenger, He's obviously clocked us sharing this beer or something. He goes, he said, "Give us a wave, on Top of the Pops." So the wave I gave, my mum thought I was giving it to her, but in actual fact, I was giving it to the policeman.
I'll have to look at that, actually.
For letting us go. Anyway, so I got to Top of the Pops when we did the run through and all that business, and it's all a bit exciting. You get in there, you're kind of slightly underwhelmed by, it's really tiny, this place, isn't it? And they've got a few different stages, and they're stopping halfway through a song or after the first verse, and you can't quite figure out what's going on, but they're changing lighting, changing camera positions constantly in front of me, just off the stage to and down to my right. There was a person stood there all the time and never moved. I'd assumed there was something to do with the production. And then we did a final run through, Stephen, Dinesh, Deepak, and myself. And the lights came up at the end, and I looked down, and it was George Michael, and he'd been standing there all the time through several run throughs singing the song. So I think he knew the words better than me. It's like, all right. And because they were on with Wham, he was still with Wham there. It was great, really good fun. You think, well, I didn't expect that to happen a year ago. I wouldn't, I was doing my graphic design job and playing with Blancmange every so often, and I was happy. And then this opportunity to sign to the record company came along, and here we are less than a year later, and we're on Top of the Pops. Enjoy the moment, enjoy it. And that's what we did whilst it was fun. It was great. And then when it stopped being fun, I stopped it.
Before we get into that there, I must mention the video for Living on the Ceiling, because it was filmed in Cairo in Egypt. Now, at that there time, the only people that were making videos in exotic locations were Duran. So how did you end up there?
Well, I've mentioned this before, but if Duran's Rio was the Harrods version, then ours was Living on the Ceiling was the Woolworths version. So it was done on a shoestring budget with a very inventive director, Clive Richardson, and incredibly, I said, a really small budget, and the help of the Egyptian government. So, and I think without them saying they would, I don't know how Clive managed to pull that favour, but without their help, it wouldn't have got made. So we just went over there and had a run around Cairo and around the pyramids for a bit, and it was good. It was good fun.
But the band went on to have more hits, including Waves, Blind Vision, That's Love, That Is, Don't Tell Me. But as you said, you decided to break up the band in June in 1986 after a Greenpeace concert. Is that right, at London's Royal Albert Hall? So what happened? Why did you decide to end that period of the band then?
To put it in a nutshell, to save a friendship. So, yeah, that's exactly why. I think, in a large, looking at it now, we've become victims of the machine. Some of it our fault, some of it not, some of it beyond our control. but essentially it was to save a friendship.
And after that, did you just part ways completely with Stephen, or did you stay in touch at
Yeah, we
all?
stayed in touch.
Yeah.
We didn't see each other as much, and that was probably a good thing. As I mentioned earlier, we were like chalk and cheese, so when you're working with somebody in close, you're very close quarters, under self, the pressure of the record company to have another hit, or your own imposed pressure, or whatever, whatever it is. I mean, God, they're far worse things. It was great fun, but when the energy is constructive, it's great. But as soon as it becomes destructive, well, it's pointless. So, as I said, it was the time to get out, and I just said, I came off stage, I said, I'm not doing that again, and I didn't. So until 2010, 2011, when Stephen and I played some songs to Stephen, and we decided to finish off the other embryonic things together and release Blanc Burn. And I'm really pleased we got to do that album together. But it was clear that Stephen's health was far more important than making records. So I get on with it. I carry the Blancmange flag.
You have certainly indeed, because after that album, you've been relentless. I think in the last 10 years, you put out 7 more Blancmange albums, and then the instrumental series Nil by Mouth. You're just constantly putting stuff out. Do you ever take any time off?
Yeah, I do. I do take time off, and I do other things. Play football, see my family, and do all the normal things that other people do. I mean, for me, making music's perfectly normal. So it's I'm lucky to get to do it. I'm lucky to get to work with the people I do work with. I mentioned Benj. It's just I've learned so much from working with him, and with on the Fader project too, with Jez Bernholtz on the near future. Then there's the remainder who are supporting Blancmange on tour. So I'll be it won't be 11 gigs, it'll be 22 gigs. So get there early if you're coming to see us.
You're supporting yourself in the new tour, isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much are you looking forward to the shows coming up? I think they're starting May, is that right?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the shows. I'm not looking forward to the traveling so much and the hotels, but the group of people that we all know each other well, so that'll be good fun. And I'll also look forward to coming home and seeing my friends and family. So it's, but we're not away every day. We're doing batches of 3s and 4s. So there's plenty of time to catch up on other things. There'll still be plenty of time to do the washing and kind of get I don't know, repair my bike. Fill a Gabion basket. Everybody needs to fill a Gabion basket.
If people want to understand the music of Blancmange, what if you were to choose 5 songs that's on the compilation that could make people understand who Blancmange are, what would the 5 songs be?
I could do with somebody telling me that. I really could. I wouldn't know where. And I think that's one of the things I like about Blancmange is that, I'm always like kind of looking. Well, say I'm looking. Anything's up for grabs or nothing's safe. Like, you never know what I'm going to write about. So I really don't know what I'm going to. It's like, blimey, I find myself thinking that's worth putting it just on. Okay. I don't know. I'd probably say we'll listen to some tracks from Private View. Listen to Reduced Voltage. Sometimes these. Maybe have a listen to Anodyne, Distant Storm, The Fall. That's 5 already, and we haven't even got to the old stuff. Listen to The Day Before You Came. Listen to our version of a wonderful Abba song. I mean, I absolutely adore Abba.
Everyone's covering everyone now, but back then nobody really was, and you covered that song. How did that come around?
We
and Abba weren't cool then either.
No, they weren't. They were too. I didn't care whether they were cool or not. So I mean, I just like. I mentioned Johnny Cash earlier. Well, I was brought up on, Abba when they arrived on the scene. Abba was one of their music was one of the albums that was put on when we all had chores to do around the house, and I'd be cleaning out the hearth or having to clean out the guinea pig's cage or whatever it was. Abba would be on whilst my mum and dad and my sister were doing other things, the chores in the house. The Abba song 82 that you mentioned, Living on the Ceiling, it was in the charts over Christmas and New Year, and we've been booked to do the Tube on New Year's Eve coming into 83. And so the record company said, look, you have a pretty tight schedule next year. Why don't you think about taking a break at Christmas? So Stephen and his partner, me and mine, and Vince Clarke and his then partner, we all went to Tenerife, and I took a Walkman. A few of us took Walkmans with us, and one of the cassettes I had was Abba the singles. So we used to listen to that round the pool. I remember Vince sitting there with his leather jacket on in the heat. He had a leather jacket on a sun lounger.
That's Vince Clarke.
Brilliant. So we were listening to Abba, and Steve and I said, we've got to do an Abba cover. We've got to do it. So it was then. And Vince said, round the pool, he said, yeah. I said, one day I'm going to do the same thing. So we beat him to it. So we went back and started recording we did quite a few versions of The Day Before You Came, but eventually we got that one up, hopefully, as near as we could. You never get it right, but you do what you do, and that was the one we decided to release. Record company were a bit surprised when we said we wanted to do that, but good for them. They actually said, yeah, they gave it their blessing, which is great. And what's more important is Abba gave it their blessing as well. So we got a letter from them saying how much they liked our version. So much so that their record company gave us the permission to use some of their video in our video, which is quite nice. You wouldn't get that today, would you?
No, and it's a great version. And you lost a letter, didn't you, from the band in the pub? You left it in the pub, isn't that right? I read that. Yeah,
that was just an easy, kind of drinking session. There was nothing kind of, untoward. There was no tension, anything like that. I mentioned, when we stopped working together, to preserve friendship. None of that was to the fore at that point. We just went to the pub, met a manager who said he's got a letter for us. We had a few pints, and next thing, me and Stephen have had a Barney and stormed out the pub, and our manager had stormed out Egon as well. We left the letter in there with the empties.
That could probably turn up somewhere in some auction sale or something like that. And then Vince, in I think the early 90s with Erasure, went on to do the Abba-esque EP.
Fantastic.
Which was fantastic as well, yeah. And I don't know whether I read this, I heard this somewhere, but you've recorded a covers album with Vince Clarke, is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. So it's just we need. Vince and I started it, and then Benj was asked to get involved. So the three of us have been working on it, and so one day it's kind of all recorded. So it just needs mixing. So it might come out sometime. We'll have to see.
Well, hopefully we don't have to wait 40 years, Neil, like some of your tracks.
No. There's a lot of tracks that you don't have to wait more than 40 minutes for.
Well, that would be very exciting because I'm a big fan of your music and obviously Vince. So, yeah, it would be good to hear. And Abba and stuff like that. So it would be good. Yeah. In fact, is there any Abba? Have you re-recorded any new Abba tracks on it?
Well, you must be able to read my mind because I was just about to say something, but there is an Abba track on it, yeah.
Cool.
Not telling you which.
And can you give me a hint of any other covers that might be on it?
No, not at the moment. It is done. Okay. There's some interesting ones without a doubt.
Okay, okay. And what name would you put the album out under, or
You
you
know
not
what? I
decided?
don't know. I really don't know. No idea. That hasn't been discussed actually. Well,
Okay,
it has been discussed, but nobody's kind of said, yeah, that's the name. So no name at the moment.
okay. Just a few more, Neil.
Yeah,
I
of
like to
course.
ask my guests the following questions.
Go on.
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
Blimey. Can I not have somebody else's musical career?
Well, if you could go back, if there was something you would like to change and not happen that way, or if you would like to relive, an amazing moment in your career.
Oh, I don't. No, I'm more interested in what's next. Really, I really am. I don't have a the best. I can tell you the best moment in my musical career. I've got two fantastic children who are grown up now, and my son is a musician as well. He goes under the name Kincaid, and Joe and I were lucky enough to be asked to go and we did an EP together, Lake for Some, and that was released. So it's Kincaid featuring Blancmange, came out a number of years ago, and John Grant was working with the Wrangler lot, so Phil, Mal, and Bench, and they were going out as Creep Show to promote their album, and they asked Joe and I to support them. And our first gig was in Liverpool, and standing on stage with my son was the most amazing moment musically
Wow.
in my life. And off stage, playing the piano with my daughter, when we would sing, well, she'd play and I'd do part of it, and sing Sound and Vision. They're special moments. So nothing to do with Blancmange, but kind of indirectly to do with Blancmange.
And is that the David Bowie song, Sound and Vision?
Yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite Bowie tracks, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads us actually on to this one. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Oh, God, there's so many. Gosh, so many albums. That is really difficult. An album that I love to listen to with my partner is and we end up dancing. And I'm not a very good dancer, but it's usually kind of late at night, and you end up having a bit, kind of a bit of a dance at the end of a party or something like that. And it tends to be all of the album would be Stone Roses' first album.
Wow, that's one of my favorite albums. In fact, it's my second favorite album of all time.
Yeah, it's just incredible, absolutely incredible album. And so
I never seen that coming down, Nate. I never seen that coming from you.
No, well, there you go.
I was expecting you to say Bowie or T-Rex or something. No, it's a what a fantastic album. Every song is a belter. And you can just play it right from the start.
Incredible,
to the end.
Incredible album.
Do you believe in guilty pleasures? What song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Well, I quite like a novelty song. So, does that qualify? Can I tell you a story about a novelty song?
Yes, absolutely.
So we were on our way to. Must have been. Where were we? Oh, last year, Howard Jones asked Blancmange, well, he asked me to support him on his tour, and it was fantastic fun. I mean, Howard's such a lovely person and really lovely guy, and we had a great time on tour with him. And then we were coming from, I think we'd done a gig in Cardiff, and we were driving to London, and we came in on the Westway and stopped off at a hostelry to empty our cloaks. And anyway, we had a pint by the river and had something to eat, and then head off to our sound check. And when you came out of the, you had to go on back down to the Fuller's Brewery on the Chiswick Road, the A4, and it was absolutely jam packed. And yeah. Anyway, we're in this car, this big kind of car, and just driving along, and it's just absolutely packed, and it's hot, and everybody's pissed off. And I said, okay, I'm USB. I need to Bluetooth into the sound system. And give me a second. Oh, God, give me a second. Give me a second, and I'll play it for you. All right, so this is a playlist. I have found a playlist, my library playlists, and it'll come up. It's called Neil's Annoying Songs. So we put Animal Magic on. The Animal Magic theme tune from the 70s.
Yes.
70s. And then when we got to the roundabout, there was even more traffic. So we put the Vision On theme tune on. And we were just all stuck there going. And all the drivers, everybody just kind of wound the windows down and was just like laughing, and it just kind of cooled everybody down. It was such a lovely moment with people in hysterics because it's like if you see somebody with a cassette and then you ask them what to do with the pencil, you either know or you don't know. It's like this thing. They just knew, let it go. It doesn't matter, So it was like a cool chilling out moment. Anyway, that's my guilty pleasure. I like very annoying songs every so often, and I sing them and leave them as earworms for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go, just as I'm about to walk out of the house, I'll be singing, if I said you had a beautiful body, would you hold it? And then just go, bye, close the door, and I'm off.
Maybe you should record one of them.
No.
Covers album.
I quite fancy the Vision On theme tune. I might do that. Anyway, look, I better let you get going anyway, because I've got to get off as well, so I'll be in trouble.
Yeah, that was me wrapped up anyway. I just wanted to say, is there anything that you would like to mention quickly before we wrap up?
No, just to make sure people get there early to the gigs, to see the remainder as well as Blancmange, because you'll get a double whammy of us lot. And looking forward to the album coming out. And obviously beyond that, there'll be more Blancmange and lots more of the other projects as well. So looking forward to getting on tour, without a doubt.
Yeah. And the compilation, it's great. As I said at the start, there's so many great songs on there that I'd forgot about, and it's just great to have them all in one place. And all the new stuff fits in just exactly with the early stuff back from the 80s. It's amazing.
Mark, it's very, very kind of you to say. Thank you very much indeed.